Hello and welcome to the Chia R&D Tech Talk with Bram and Cameron. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the development process within Chia Network, different things we focus on, how we identify those focuses, and then dive into a few of the items that we are developing right now. To kick us off, let's go ahead and start with a high-level concept. And Bram, I'm going to turn this over to you initially. If you can kind of describe our R&D workflow from initial concept generation to entering that engineering backlog.
Uh, yeah, so there's this thing that's kind of universal in software that you always have more ideas than you could ever possibly implement. That's just universal to doing software. And so what you do with all of these things is you have to kill your darlings and and call the list to something coherent. And then only out of the things that are most compelling do you work on them and try and produce a minimum viable product out of them as quickly as possible, or they're never going to ship. So this is just the way of software in general that one just learns if you do software for a while. Is it's very easy to fall into these traps of just never shipping. And like the number one killer of software products actually is product thrash. That someone who's a product manager who does not actually have a software background running a software project will often thrash the project and keep changing direction and put too much crap on it and never fucking ship. So that's a thing to know. So anyway, we around here we have we when you're working on a foundational technology, especially, you have way too many ideas. We have too many ideas here about what to do, like way more than we could possibly do. So I will at times update the backlog list of this, which we only semi-coherently maintain every once in a while because the whole point is to cull stuff off of it. Um, so we have a backlog of ideas to do. Some of now, in terms of things that we've actually done and are working on now, some of them are engineering backed, or came from engineering, and some, or one, there's not many things here, came from a business standpoint. So right now, our active projects are Permuto and new proof of space and gaming. So Permuto is in some sense less technically ambitious, but that's mostly because the high risk groundwork for it was built already. We'd already kind of built this infrastructure that just on principle seemed like a good thing and didn't have an immediate product for it. And then we started working on Permuto, which is a really nice focusing. Okay, this is what we're actually doing with this kind of project. Um, and then for the new proof of space, we just kind of had to. Like we'd been putting a small amount of resources into ongoing work on our proofs of space. And then these methods of cheesing the old proofs of space came out. So it's like we had to increase the amount of resources there and take this project seriously. So that's where that came from. Um, and then there's gaming, which is more from the engineering side. The product, the business thought there is, hey, we want to do state channel stuff. Um, and viewing it on that end a little bit like an R&D project, but it also is a product in its own right because peer-to-peer gaming is very much a real thing. So in terms of actual in terms of the actual product view of it, it stands on its own as building gaming. Uh, so we're down to, three active projects. Gene says we have a barbell product strategy of consumer and enterprise, and our barbell is very barbelly. We have a really boring TradFi project and a really out there consumer project. um, uh, and then there's new proof of space, which is just from a resourcing standpoint, a a project, but it's from a product standpoint, it falls into just like keeping the wheels from falling off the bus. We always have like ongoing resources that just go into maintaining consensus and blockchain software and stuff over time. Just on principle, and we keep having need and reason to keep putting stuff into that. Um, and there, it can be very hard when you have that kind of category of things to do coherent resourcing because if you put everything, like literally everything you have uh, into the same backlog, the things that have immediate product benefit are always going to win, and just your fundamental resourcing on your like basic project just never happens. So the only way to really get around that is to just make separate lists and make a high level decision about what amount of your available resources go into each bucket and move forward that way. Because otherwise, you just wind up in never ending arguments about the relative merits of fundamental work versus immediate product benefit. And that's just a stupid argument to have all the time. So you just have to make a high level resourcing decision, and then you can talk coherently about the relative priorities within each of those buckets without having this never-ending argument about the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like talking about like the importance of authenticity in music or something. It's just not a useful argument to have. Um, okay, so yeah, so we have a bunch of resources also on just ongoing stuff. But in terms of what we're doing now. The way gaming was built and the way our blockchain was built to begin with. We previously had, the whole company project of release the blockchain at all, and then we had a project of do pooling and yada yada yada. The way those things tend to work, the things that are basically everything other than Permuto so far hasn't had the technical groundwork, and it's been these very high risk, very engineering focused projects. So on basically all of those, the flow is I make detailed notes about what's going on and how to do it, and then we implement it. Um, in the case of gaming, that was that was just part of the development process. That was kind of a weird project when it started. So it was me writing little snippets of code and writing a whole lot of notes and giving Art a lot of Chia Lisp language feature requests. Art, my code won't run. Add this feature to the language. So um, the uh, so yeah, so there was a lot of that. Um, and that has resulted in a lot of improvements to Chia Lisp. And again, due to the way these things work, we've we are a little bit under-resourced on Chia Lisp right now. So after gaming ships, Adam and Art are going to move over to working primarily on Chia Lisp because there's a backlog of get that all integrated and make it get everything into main so that community can have an easier time using all the new features, which are very, very nice. Um, so, uh, excuse me. Um, but there was a lot of just me doing a spec, and we didn't put that much resources on it. We still don't have that much resources on it because there's the mythical man month problem. You can only throw so many resources at a project, but in particular, a high risk project where just notes on just high level architectural decisions are still being written. It's just a waste of everybody's time for people to be assigned to implement this thing that I barely have useful notes on how to implement. It would just be a distraction for me to try and help people write things that haven't been spec'd properly yet. So, I mean, it was bad enough. The state the notes were in when I handed them off to Art was a little traumatic for Art, even as it is. So, for future projects, uh, you want this high risk, high latency portion of the thing to be done in advance, so you can just start throwing resources at it immediately. So to that end, we have these upcoming projects of having a payment channel network and having our next gen vaults. And for both of those, I have been working on notes of how to do them over the last couple of years, as side projects on everything. And those are mostly in a state where they're implementable right now. I would say the notes on payment channel network are about as mature as I can make them without the reality check of actually doing implementation. That project by its nature has a lot of moving parts and will bump into stuff. And we definitely want gaming to be in a more mature state so we can use the gaming code base as the beginnings of that, because this is part of the plan the whole time is we do gaming so that we have state channel stuff written and then we can use this as the basis for a payment channel network. Um, but I have extensive notes on that and have figured out a bunch of the high level architectural questions and how to fix them. And then the for next gen vaults, that is I'm still updating it. It's been like back on that as of the last week. Um, that one, the notes are actually in an implementable state, and I think that one is actually in some sense a lot more straightforward to actually build once the notes are done. There are fewer moving parts in it. You have peers talking to each other. So it turns out there's this big thing in there about having a peer communications protocol that is, kind of we already have some of that with Enterprise Wallet. It needs to be made more mature for next gen vaults kind of stuff. Um, but that one's looking pretty good as far as having like an actual like I'm not done polishing it yet, but getting very close to it. So when the time comes for X to actually implement that thing, it isn't going to be an experimental R&D project anymore. It's going to be a reasonably normal software development project right from the get-go. So trying to get really, really ahead of the game on on both of those things. And then there's always other stuff going on. Like I said, there's always more things that you know of than you can actually implement. Um, but I think another thing that's likely to be done in the not too distant future, which more or less falls into the category of not a product, just part of the ongoing maintenance of fundamental technology, is building a virtual a local virtual trusted full node. Because light wallets basically universally have this problem of they're speaking light wallet protocol, and you want to speak to several not really trusted full nodes and collate their answers together to
Yep.
be more trusted. And the logic for that is a huge pain in the ass. And so the plan is to, rather than having individual wallets implement this super jankily, we implement something that you talk wallet protocol to, and it looks like just a normal, completely trusted full node. And whenever you send it a query, it is sending queries out to multiple, not really trusted full nodes out there and collating their answers as they come back. And that way we can write that once and every single light wallet can use the exact same thing. And not have to deal with this super scary technical networking stuff when you're really trying to work on this more hacker project wallet thing. Um, so that's kind of high level view. I mean, we have lots more things we would like to do. We always talk about doing HODL coin already, but we still haven't done that yet properly. We did an experimental version and then realized that the new opcodes could improve it. The new opcodes aren't so new anymore now, but it's not an important project, so we haven't been doing it. A little more seriously, there's having a what's the term? Oh, having a confidential coin on top of Chia. So have plans for that, which are kind of neat, where you take your where you can take your Chia or your cat or whatever and make a drop coin that's claimable for it. And you get in return these confidential tokens. A confidential token it's like a cat, but the actual balance is hidden. You can't see the balance. And so you can transact with it. But then the idea here is because essentially the amounts are encrypted. The coins remember the amounts, but they're encrypted. And then the idea is you can then take these drop coins that in some sense nobody owns, but you can take one of these confidential tokens and prove its amount and use that to extract the original Chia from a drop coin. So this is a very a fairly gentle middle layer of privacy that you can have. It's not hiding the flow of transactions, but it's hiding the amounts, which is like the most important piece of information in the whole thing. And it's much, much easier to implement than Zcash style stuff. Um, so have thoughts that we would really like to do that eventually. That's in the, that's in the ice box. Uh, we just had this idea the other day. I got to write a blog post about this. We were talking about pooling protocol, and how it would be nice to make it so you could just immediately start um, plotting, and be able to join a pool after the fact, like only after you got a farming reward or something. So there's actually a neat thing you could do. You could use Yakuhito's trick for having like a doubly linked list of things. But instead of being a list of names, it's a list of public keys. And the purpose of this is it ensures that a singleton for a particular public key will only be issued once. Um, so that way you could generate a public key locally that you own, that's yours, that yeah, you generate this public key locally, and you start using it for your pooling protocol, like in your plots before you actually do anything on chain, because you're worried about the transaction costs of this. Um, and the way it works is it allows it so that if you ever do like win something or just want to get it set up later at a time when transaction fees are low or something, you can go and claim your public key and make a singleton issued from it. Um, and that is guaranteed because of the on-chain programming to only be doable once. Um, and unfortunately, we can't find excuses to work very much on pool product. Because we have so many other things to do. We do have to update pool protocol at least a little bit for new proofs of space, but we might wind up just very narrowly just just extending it for the new proof of space format. There's a list of other stuff we would like to do with it, that we just can't justify further work on at the moment. Was literally the first thing we ever did in Chia Lisp. So definitely, and we did it on a huge rush. So definitely a backlog there. Anyway, high level point being lots and lots of stuff it would be cool to work on that seem like great ideas that might happen someday. But due to just the nature of software, these things absolutely must be triaged. So we're at a point right now, uh, and we're trying to, on top of triaging them, being well prepared before we start actual implementation, which we have not done a great, which out of necessity we have not done a great job of in the past. So, so I, so right now we're down to essentially three projects, and I mean it depends how you count it. There's do you count, the usual ongoing maintenance as a project, right? Like, and do you count new proof of space as a separate project from that? Yada yada yada. But in terms of consumer facing products that they're doing, we're only doing two of them right now, and those both have very coherent. This is the MVP. This is what we're getting towards, kind of things in them, and it's very important to have that discipline. And then we have, in the pipeline, two, maybe three more things, and a whole lot more just like ongoing consensus level work, including work on Chia Lisp and tooling for that, and ongoing improvements of our new proof of space stuff. So, yes, that was my very long-winded way of saying we have too many things we would like to do and are having to triage heavily, and and we're keeping it small-ish in terms of how much we're working on right now, and have detailed plans for our upcoming projects at such time so that we are ready to start implementing them at such time as we decide we have the resources to actually and the resources and the need to actually start implementing them.
Most certainly. I think you've touched on some really interesting points in there. One being something I'm really impressed with is how much we actually take on as a company and how we're able to delineate who's working on what. And, your last point there, I'm hoping we can drill into a little bit more. And I think Cameron would be great at this just because one of his roles inside of the Chia network organization is to go through and help manage all of those different development teams, figure out what resources we need, and make sure they're allocated to the right teams. So, Cameron, if you don't mind diving into a little bit of how do we handle all of this concurrent work and how do
Mhm.
we really group those development teams to do so?
Yeah, great question. So it's sort of like what Bram pointed out earlier. You kind of have to um, group them and then prioritize them separately and allocate resources separately. So what we've done at Chia is we've divided into three engineering teams. And so we've got a blockchain engineering team, we've got the cloud platform team, and then we finally have a labs team. And so within that, we've got people assigned to those teams, and then they each have their own backlog and a corresponding product manager. And so we're prioritizing the work that goes into those teams, and then we sort of iterate, through sprints and iterate towards delivery. So hopefully, pretty conventional setup. No surprises there for people. But yeah, it really does allow us to set independent roadmaps and timelines per sort of area of work. So with the blockchain team, like Bram said, we're really focused on the next proof of space and the hard fork that supports that. On the cloud platform, we're really focused on the cloud wallet and the features that are needed to support Permuto. And then on the labs team, it's actually where the game development is happening. So all those three things are being prioritized and implemented independently.
Most certainly. Thank you very much. And for those who are participating and watching this excellent tech talk on R&D, do keep in mind that you can ask your questions. We prefer them come through Zoom. However, we are also monitoring our Discord community feedback channel in addition to YouTube as well. And we have had a few questions come in. So I have a question for you, Bram,
Yeah.
about one of the initiatives you mentioned, which is gaming.
Yeah.
The question is on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm
Yeah.
assuming 1 being not ready and 10 being we're
Yeah.
launching tomorrow. How far along are you with launching the games?
Oh man. Well, they'll be out soon.
Don't say
So
soon.
yeah. Well, it's at the point now you can actually follow along with the development that's happening. You can watch the actual thing. But I think it's fair to say I'm loath to say much of anything. But uh a I think there's a pretty good chance we'll be going into alpha before the end of the year, and possibly well in advance of that. But as always, very hard to schedule these things. But you can follow along with development of it. It's far enough along that outside developers have actually been able to dig into the code base and figure out what's going on, which I'm impressed by because it's pretty half chewed and hard to just run right now. But it's getting there.
It's like a lot of things that last 10% of the work is a lot of the effort, but it is functional, and we have done sort of internal rounds of gameplay even on mainnet. So it's definitely real. It's just a lot of loose ends to be tied up.
Yeah, we did do an internal demo where we actually did something on chain, which was janky but functional. And I won one mojo out of art doing one round of Cal Poker, doing
Hmm.
that, and that was actually on chain. That one had notably a really critical bug where like messages were getting stuffed up for like a minute going through, so that was not a great demo, but a functional one. Since fixed that bug, so we could in principle do that same demo much better today. But there's a lot of other stuff we're getting done. We're trying to make it so the actual thing that we present is actually fairly polished to everyone. So we're at the point. Notably, right now, the thing that we're doing is one of the things on the immediate backlog is getting this like I had vibe coded some UX stuff for it, which should be viewed as not here I wrote the code for it, but this is like a mock, but much more functional than a graphical mock is. Um, and we were just discussing like how do we get this integrated? Because it's like, do we iteratively update this vibe coded code until it's actually working in the thing? Do we start copying bits of code over from it? Do we just use it as a reference and rewrite from scratch? There was discussions of that. Not my call on that one because I'm not doing this implementation, but we're actually at the point of actually making it look nice. So pretty far along there.
And I will also say, it takes a lot of work to get the game functional. But ultimately, if the game is not fun to play, then it's kind of meaningless. I will say the cow poker is a new game, and it is a lot of fun, actually. I think the people will have a lot of fun playing cow poker. I was kind of surprised when I started playing it, just like how interesting it was. So I think people are going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, by total happenstance coincidence, I am a professional puzzle inventor. And and there's some amount of crossover with game design there, and just happenstance, the best game I ever invented was California Poker, and it just happens to be a perfect fit for being our reference game. So we have a good one there. And then the other two games that we're going to go out with for 1.0, it will not, Alpha will be California Poker only. Um, but for 1.0, there's going to be Crunk, which is basically two-player Wordle, and then there's going to be something much closer to Hold'em. It's going to be Space Poker.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think we have a follow-up question here, which is a bit of a reference to something else you had created. But when
Calobracho?
Cali, Calbalatro, Calbalatro, combining Balatro and Cal
California.
poker.
Okay, so Cal is for California, Balatro. I don't understand Balatro at all. I'm this weirdo. I find Balatro just unplayable. I tried. I really did. I just couldn't do it. The I think okay, my understanding of how Balatro works from a game mechanics standpoint is it's a it's not really a card game. It's a roguelike, do they call it? It's this, Final Fantasy like fights kind of style game, really. And it's one where you speed run it. It is like the normal way of doing it as a solo game, that you don't so much get better and better at the game as you memorize the sequence of cards that are going to come up secretly, even though it goes through the motions of showing it to you secretly each time. People don't real time play it that way. They just do it over and over again until they've kind of memorized what's coming up in the future. Um, and they totally speed run it, which is okay. um, uh, I don't know how that you would translate that to what we're doing exactly. What's actually supported by the technology we have is very, very limited. It only supports two-player games with very few turns in them. And and there are further within what you can do there, there's a whole bunch of subtlety around what you can do with random numbers. Which is a little hard to explain. So part of the suite of games that we have is demonstrating what can be done easily and how. Um, the uh, I would say there are a few things that are weird with Balatro. One, it's a solo game, not a two-player game. So it's like you can't uh, rolling out solo games for money is a problem. And uh, on a few levels, one of them being the legal one. But um, The other one is you like collect cards in it, I think. And there is this feature that you kind of want of having collectibles in your games, because there's a lot of games that have that. It's a little hard to come up with rules, partially hard for me because I never do this stuff. It's a little hard to come up with rules for a game where if you have a game for money, you really, really don't want it to be that it's pay to win, right? So there's this question of how do you have collectibles in a game without it becoming pay to win? So you can kind of try doing things like making it so that any item that you get will change the rules for both sides. So it doesn't favor either side. It just changes the rules, and someone can be more familiar with the effects of a particular item or more comfortable with it, and then you buy it for that reason, even though it's very much not pay to win. Your opponent could still outplay you. You don't get an actual advantage. So that's sort of a vague thought there. But on a technical level, we haven't completely solved. There's sort of hooks for it, but we haven't completely solved how do you have game items that actually get used, and but there's sort of vaguely a roadmap for it, and then there's just game rules questions of how do you do it. But then on top of that, there's also, Balatro is a very long game, so you need these games that are very, very short. Like poker uh, is a game where a poker session is not one long game; it's many very, very short games. So it's kind of a good fit for what we're doing here in some ways. There's one nuance that's weird about random numbers, but um, yeah. So you very much have to have games that are designed for this very, very specific medium. And part of us rolling out a suite of games is to show people a bunch of things that can be done in the medium, so people have some idea where to get started. It's not everything that can be done in the medium, obviously. Like I just said, there's this giant gaping hole of we don't have collectibles yet. um, but yeah, that's the state of a game design for it.
Thank you. And a bit of a follow-up on that last part is when other developers want to look at Cal Poker, look at Chia Gaming, and look at these examples, two questions arise, and that's obviously where can they find it? And then the other question is when can they expect something like a game design toolkit so that they could start building their own?
Um, the um uh well, depends what you mean by toolkit. So there's the Chia Gaming project on GitHub where you can watch ongoing development as it happens. I think a lot of the development isn't going on in the main branch, but you can see everything going on right now in there. Um, Even in the alpha, it will be possible for you to see how California Poker works and make variant games pretty straightforwardly. Um, as per usual, the number one pain point for these things is that we don't yet have great development tools for GLisp. In particular, we don't have uh, stack traces. So that that's something which we ourselves are very much feeling the pain of that. So we're going to once one point one even when the alpha is out, you can go and look at the California poker code and modify it yourself and tweak that to come up with new games along those lines. And then once 1.0 is out, there will be a lot more games that you can look at the code and figure it out. And the plan is that Adam and Art are going to go back to working on Chialis dev tools. After that, um, Chialis in general. After that, with a big focus at this point because the language is much more mature than it used to be on the actual dev tools. Um, well, one, getting everything merged into main. We have really great stuff like diagnostic statements that aren't in main right now. But then also, you really, really want it to be that when you have an error, it gives you a stack trace of the damn error so you can see what's going on, because that will make development way less painful. So that will be out, at some point in the future, but that's what's kind of upcoming. But sorry about the not great state of dev tools right now. Um, but even in our alpha release, it will be relatively easy to make new games. Just not many examples of how to go about doing it. But if someone wants to make, like, I don't know, two-player blackjack or something, they'll have the necessary tools available to figure out how to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I know a lot of people are interested to get their hands into it and not only play some games, but probably develop some of their own. That was
Yeah, I
yeah,
think much easier for people than developing their own games. Although I think once we have the tooling in place, making a new game will be like a really good Hello Worlds for GLisp development because it doesn't involve any thinking about coin set and all that weird magic and stuff. You can just write it. And we have we have put a whole lot of work into making the dev environment nice in that when you're working on a game now, you don't need to think at all about the logic for falling over on chain. The way you write your game, it kind of you write it where it's assuming it's always playing on chain as far as it's concerned. And um, yeah, it's always written as if it's playing on chain. And then um, uh, excuse me. Um, and then all the logic of playing off chain and then failing over on chain when necessary and stuff that's handled by higher level code. So you need to not, so you don't have to think about that in the slightest when you're writing a new game. You just think about the game logic and the UX for your game with the slightly weird thing that it needs to be chopped up into steps in this particular way. Um, so we've actually slowed down development a bit to make that really nice. But before people do that, the much lower hanging fruit for the whole thing is is working on trackers and game hosts, which are basically web-based wallets. So the tracker is pretty much what you'd expect. It's like a site that people go to and can talk to each other on and challenge each other to games, and it's what is used to bootstrap sessions between other players. And then uh, so that's um, so that's one component, and we're gonna release a super janky reference one on the assumption that other people are gonna make nice ones. And those can be made very sophisticated. They can handle all kinds of other things of like identity and history tracking and cheat detection. We make it so you can't cheat as far as rules of the game go, but people could get like outside assistance. And so there are techniques for checking for that. And while it would be illegal for a tracker to act as an actual intermediary to the rules of the game under most circumstances, because that would be being a casino for them to do detection of outside assistance is very much within the within the realm of the law. You can do that. So there's lots and lots of stuff that can be done with trackers. They can be made much nicer in a zillion different ways. And there's going to be a big need for that being done. And then there's the game hosts, which is mostly static web pages, and that is essentially it's a wallet. We're rolling out with it being mostly web-based because you can do that from your phone because you can't get a freaking app in the app store that does this kind of gaming. I think this kind of gaming that we are doing. Actually, I'm pretty sure this kind of gaming that we are doing is technically within the rules of the app stores about what they allow, but good luck explaining that to them. So we're rolling out with these basically all static web pages that act like apps for all practical purposes, which means we have to do things like make it not fail when you hit reload on that web page, which we're working on right now. Um, but we're getting, yeah, so we're getting that up and running, and we're again going to release a reference version of that. But we're assuming people are going to make nicer ones of those, and you can think of making one of those as basically being a wallet vendor, although it's a slightly different category of things, but it's essentially the same type of thing as a wallet is. So those are much more low-hanging fruit than working on games. If like working on games is nice if you like want to learn some Chia Lisp in a relatively gentle way compared to everything else we're doing. Because the experience has been that writing Chia Lisp, the really hard part is working within coin set, within the coin set model that requires a lot of really strange things to happen. But we do have it set up so that if you just write a game, you just write the game and don't need to think, for the most part, don't need to think about all the weirdo coin set stuff. Um, yeah, so that's how I think people can get up and running on it. But unfortunately, it's not going to be day one, like, here's a tutorial on how to write your first game. It's going to be like, okay, here's enough tools that you can do it. And then we hope that people will start writing tutorials on such things in the future, especially as we improve just Chia Lisp tooling. Um, but then also, I strongly encourage people to think about working on trackers and game hosts before they start really thinking about games.
Yeah, thank you very much. And definitely some great advice for anybody out there who's interested to get their hands into Chia Lisp or gaming or anything else we're working on. And Cameron, I have another question for you here. We're going to change topic a little bit. This is from Monkey Zoo on YouTube. Regarding the hidden privacy tokens, could that be implemented to Cat2 tokens as well? And is the idea that any transaction can have the amounts hidden, or is it specific to XCH?
Yeah, so if you're talking about Bram was referencing what we call confidential transactions, yeah, Bram, you can correct me, but the idea is that you would be able to apply that to cat, whether it's cat two or an iteration of cats, but
I
you would
think we
have
wouldn't
fungible
call it
tokens. Yeah.
cats, or we wouldn't call it cat two. It would be like sea cats or something. It's not cats per se. Like it's most definitely not cats because the cat standard deeply within it is it's a colored coin where the amount is
Mhm.
using the high precision of mojos per chia. And if you have these confidential things, it is most definitely not doing that. So it is deeply different from cats on some level. It is another type of asset token that's not most
Mhm.
definitely not cat 2. If we do a cat 2, it won't have the confidentiality feature.
Because at a high level, the way it works is you kind of take the asset and you set it aside, and then you have these other set of coins that have a claim to it, and they can be spent and divided in dividing their claim, and then ultimately you can go back to the original
Oh,
asset.
yeah, yeah. Well, the layering here is we make a some kind of confidential token standard, and the
Mhm.
confidential token standards have tails like cats do that control their issuance and control deviations between the output value and the input value of a transaction. Um, and we then once we've made this standard, we then write a tail that does this drop coin thing.
Mhm. So that means it'll work great for fungible assets, but it wouldn't make much sense for something like an NFT.
Uh, you could, well, you can always reveal values on these things. So you could have something, an NFT or something NFT like. I haven't thought about this at all, where it required the value of the thing to be reported. So you could pay for it with a confidential thing, but you need to do a reveal at the time of the payment in order to buy an NFT with your confidential tokens. Of
Oh, sure,
course.
buying an NFT. I just mean like fractionalizing an NFT,
Oh yeah.
having a confidential portion of it doesn't really make a whole
Yeah,
lot.
that wouldn't make a lot of sense. And actually, you can always much easier than the confidential thing supporting it is you could be using drop coins and just make it so that when you buy an NFT, you have to, de-anonymize the amount that you're using to pay for the NFT.
So this is, like Brand said, something that's probably a little further out. It'll be, C cat or something, some other name for it. We have now R cats, so we've got revocable cats. Probably something between R cats and C cats. We might have CR cats, which are actually not related to either the C or the R, but we could have credential restricted cats. I think that that is something that you'll see
Yeah.
in the medium term.
Yeah, restricted cats are a layer on top of cats,
Mhm.
where confidential assets are an alternative to cats. It has to be kind of sideways off of it. And then the drop coin ones are like restricted cats are a layer on top of cats. Drop coin confidential things are a layer on top of the confidential things.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was a great answer there. And Monkey Zoo, feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions regarding. And Cameron, I'm going to change topics on us again here. I'm just going through questions that we have. So if anybody out there does have a question regarding any of our development, particular topics, feel free to ask in the Zoom Q&A in YouTube or in Discord. Cameron, over to the Cloud Wallet. What are some of the core Cloud Wallet features, and why are these a game changer for the industry?
Great question. Yeah. So one of the big things that we wanted to solve with the cloud platform is that we wanted to make self-custody easier. We wanted to solve a lot of the synchronization problems that people were having with self-hosted wallets. We wanted to make multi-sig wallets easier. We also wanted to make secure sort of key storage and signing easier. So all these things kind of come together under the cloud platform, and it results in the iOS signer, and we're also working on the Android signer now. It also means that we've added vaults, which is our kind of multi-sig solution. Um, and in addition to being able to have multi-sig, we also wanted to have secure recovery. So like a social recovery, the vault allows you to designate a third party or a separate key that you have as something that can be used to rekey your vault in case you've lost it. So there's a whole kind of slew of these types of things that we think are really important for not just individuals to adopt blockchain kind of securely in a way that makes sense, but especially institutions to be able to do self-custody. Right now, institutions that are adopting blockchain are pretty heavily relying on custody providers who will take custody of their assets, and they can call them up and tell them when they want to transact. But we think for where we see the blockchain going, we think enterprises really should be able to do self-custody and be able to do their own transactions. But in order to make that happen, we need all these things that we just talked about. We need a great key management signing solution. We need to have good multi-sigs. We need to have recovery. You need to have great synchronization. You need to have great workflows. And that's really kind of what we're working for on the cloud wallet. And so a lot of it so far has been getting that kind of baseline in place, but then as a part of that baseline, there are things that we're trying to get feature parity on that existed in the desktop wallet. So it started with getting XCH asset support and adding cats, adding NFTs. I mentioned credential restricted cats are a thing that would be coming. Verifiable credentials is obviously a part of that. DID is something that was in the desktop wallet that probably won't make it over exactly in the same way. We do have some new ideas for what it means to have a DID in the cloud wallet and vault context. So yeah, there's a little bit of feature parity work that we're still doing on the cloud platform as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know
The,
that's one of the
the
reasons that we've not seen that actual release of the Cloud Wallet platform yet. And Bram, I'll turn it over to you for your
Yeah,
thoughts
oh,
here.
the focus of vaults that we have there is very much basic multi-sig. And the
Mhm.
next generation one is the focus of that is on having cancellation periods for things. So we actually did do something like that for the product we're using for the pre-farm. And that is we have felt the pain of dogfooding that thing ourselves. And this is going to be like so that one it was in some ways much more sophisticated, but much less usable than the basic multi-sig that we're building in enterprise right now. And so that the next gen thing is going to have the features of our pre-farm management, but much, much better. The plan is to move our pre-farm over it, which the people doing the pre-farm management, myself very much included, are very much looking forward to. And then, uh, yeah, and that's going to be something which is meant to be really nice and usable. So if you have like a normal, boring company that just makes widgets or something that's nothing to do with software, but has a lot of cash that they want to hold in like a stable coin or something like that, they can, you can straight faced recommend to them that they use this solution to it because the self custody is completely usable and actually both more secure and cheaper than what they would get if they were doing it with their bank because just banks aren't really that great at security, even though they're entrusted with everything.
So what this means is that we'll actually have two different types of vaults. We'll have the type of vault that we have today, which is like it's a multi-sig vault that allows these instantaneous spends. And then we'll also have this new type of vault, which has limits applied to it. And you'll be able to switch between them, but it'll be a configuration. You'll be in one mode or the other. We do actually have now some clawback capabilities that you can apply in the vault today, but it's not required at the vault level, which is kind of the key distinction with this new mode.
Yeah, it's also it's sort of a pre or post send clawback. Like you start a transaction and then there's a cancellation period where the recipient could in principle see what you're doing, but it's not out there being sent to them yet. So that's the pre thing for cancellation, and that's the big focus of next gen vaults. The thing that we have already is the post send, where the threat model for that is more just like you send it and then you ask the recipient, "Hey, do you see it incoming?" And then they can say, "Oh yeah, I see it incoming," or they can say, "No, I don't see it incoming." And if they don't see it incoming, it's like, "Oh crap, I think we've been man in the middle here," and you can then call it back.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's the last question we had on Cloud Wallet so far. But we have a little bit more of a lighthearted question. I'm going to extend this to both of you. From the Planet Chia community who sends their greetings, how did you spend your day today? Was it for yourself or was it for development?
Uh, I'm I'm at like the very tail end of a cold. I'm in that like I'm sort of over the cold but still sleeping a lot kind of phase. Um, so I have a backlog of random n- not software engineering tasks I need to do that have piled up over the last 2 weeks that I got to deal with. So that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, I would guess I would say for myself, it's more development oriented. Right now, we've got some features that we're looking at for the roadmap in the medium term. Want to get kind of the sort of design and preparation work done for that. And so those are the things I'm looking at.
I've been my typically lately I do a lot of jumping between projects, but typically lately I've been working on high level notes and thoughts for architectural things, which involves a lot of sometimes just pulling myself together and getting something swapped into my brain and mulling it over and doing a lot of what looks like moping around the house while I think about it.
Yeah, thank you. I know everybody loves to hear about what you guys do, so we appreciate that. And I know, Bram, we've gone through numerous of your puzzles. We do have another question here on another development topic for us, which is the plot format.
hmm
And the question is, when will the transition to the new plot format begin? But I want to take a quick step back. And Cameron, do you mind giving us a high-level overview of why we need a new plot format?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure Bram will have some thoughts that he wants to share there as well. But we, I think made a lot of great decisions on the first proof of space format. But I think that after having worked with it and seen it in the wild and worked with some compression on it, we realized that there were some areas for improvement and some potential attack vectors over time that we wanted to be able to pull in or call out. So it's really about hardening our proof of space format for the long term. And I think that that's really the reason we're working on it is just to kind of further secure the blockchain to the best of our ability. Bram, anything you want to add
Yeah,
there?
so making proofs of space is hard because the threat, the attack surface is massive. So the problem with a proof of space is it's supposed to be that someone can't use extra computational capability to get ahead in it. And because this is literally their own resources, they have their own resources within their own data center on their own computer, and you're trying to put limitations on what they can do with this. So massive, massive attack surface here. Um, so the prior proofs of space before the one that we have out today, those just failed catastrophically. There were ways of cheesing them. The whole point of this thing is it's supposed to be that it's entirely dependent on the amount of space that you have, and you can't use extra computational power to get further ahead. And there's a tendency for these to fail to the point where the amount of space you have almost doesn't matter, and it's mostly about computation. Um, so, um, or even worse, that it winds up being like space times compute, which is super nonlinear and just favors the big players massively. So, so that's all kinds of bad. Um, so ours uh, we came up with a bunch of theoretical justifications of why certain types of attacks couldn't be done on those, and those still stand today. But several people, very much including Dr. Nick, figured out ways of cheesing it using types of hinting and stuff on it. So there are not catastrophic, but pretty bad ways people can now trade off with our current proof of space using extra compute to get credit for more space than they actually have. So we the whole plan here is to get back to the original vision of the compute doesn't matter, and everyone is on an even footing out there. So the trade-off of rolling out the new thing is farmers who are currently very compressed won't be able to be very compressed anymore, but um, uh, but they're also not going to be burning computation. So their proportion of all the space that's out there that they get will be less, but then maybe not that much less because it hits everyone else who's also compressed the same amount, and they're not having to burn electricity on it. So not really bad for them either. Um, uh, so yeah, so the big project here has been make it actually secure, right? So it took a lot of time for us to really work through what are these attacks really and what are the countermeasures that we're doing and come up with like very, very generic techniques that aren't like janky little gimmick that very narrowly stop one thing, but really very, very general approaches that really get to the underlying issue that's happening. And while we were at it, there were also certain little bits of compression that had always bothered me in the whole thing, particularly around um, two things. One of them is you have this like last table that's only really used for lookups. And that one looks like it can be dropped. And I never really figured out how to do it, but there's always this worry that when there's something where you have no theoretical reason why it has to be there, other than that you are putting it there just for lookups, someone might figure out how to do that in the future, which could get them a proprietary benefit or worse, a not proprietary benefit that costs a lot of compute. So you really don't want that to happen. And that was like a whole table's worth. So that's not good. And the other one is a smaller amount, but not trivial, where you have all these things that are happening that are essentially permutations, not really mappings. And so that gets you this information theoretic thing of what can be dropped there. And so, like with the old way, I knew how to drop half of it, but not the other half. And so you have like a like 1 or 2% or something there. And so that had always bothered me. We figured out how to fix it. So we're going to be using fancy tricks with Banish compression to do that in the new format. Okay, I should say there's part of the question is when are we going to switch to the new one, which I should answer that. So the plan is so we are in the process now of making it so that the new stuff is integrated into everything that we have. And we're going to roll out what we're calling wide plots, which are way bigger than they should be. They're like 4 times the size that they really should be, but they're something that we can implement quickly. Um, and so the plan is we push that out now, and then before the hard fork kicks in, we make really nice plotting code that has really very, very compressed plots in it. Um, and the idea being that the day we roll that out at such time, like right before you can actually start using them on chain and getting credit for them. Um, and then and the code for making them super compressed, we're actually going to keep proprietary until after the transition is done, at which point we open source it. Um, Partially because we don't want people trying to figure out how to cheese it to have an advantage where they can be automatically better than us by like a minuscule amount with any change that they get because they already have our good stuff in it. But also just because it's going to be enough of a scramble making our good compression by that time, much less making it so that we are making it packaged in a form that other people can read and use and modify and in that same time frame. So that's the high level view. More immediately, right now you can see the things that are getting in our ongoing development. We're getting it packaged in. We're not final on the format yet. Nick is doing the final bits of running numbers and twiddling knobs on it. But we're down to just running numbers and twiddling knobs um, and have code that can make plots out, although the parameters are not final. Um, what we're going to do is switch testnet over. We're going to do a transition of testnet over to the new format. Likely more than one hard fork on testnet because we have the new format and a few other related security enhancements, which will all be one thing on mainnet, but we're probably going to split it up on testnet just because we want to get the switch over to the new format out as quickly as possible on testnet. So yeah, that's the plan. So this is all happening, soon. But yeah, look forward to us actually doing the testnet upgrade.
Yeah, I know I'm going to be participating in that, and I'll have a few plots on testnet to test those out. If anybody else is interested in following along on the development of the new plot format or getting the specifics of that timeline, feel free to take a look at our chips repo on GitHub. We do have two active chips, one for the plot format and another one for that timeline specifically. So you can take a look at all the details in there. If you have any questions or you want to provide feedback, that is the best place for it. And if anybody is interested in following along more with our R&D process, if you have questions about specific development items, or if you just want to reach out and provide your input, feel free to use our GitHub channels or even inside of Discord. We definitely welcome any type of feedback within there as well. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. But I wanted to turn it back to the two of you and see if you had any other final thoughts regarding Chia R&D. Cameron?
Yeah, I think you made a good call out to for where people can go and look for development updates. I would also point out that you can follow Chia Project on Twitter. You should also probably follow Gene because Gene is usually the first to announce stuff. Sometimes before I expected him to announce it, but so that's a good place to get some intel is to get on Twitter or X, I guess, whatever.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know we also have some different types of postings on LinkedIn, so I appreciate the call out on the social channels there as well. And Bram, let's turn it over to you for final thoughts.
We have a whole lot of stuff that will be out very soon. Um, there's this thing where whenever we generally try to avoid having any dates at all that we announce because, if you miss any dates at all for any reason, by any amount of time, people freak out, as we just saw happen with some Bermuda related dates. And those delays are the delays that happen there were things that we have no control over. Um, if members of the community can get the government to open again, that would really help us a lot around here. um, uh, but but we really are at a point where a whole lot of stuff is really on the cusp right now. So now is kind of a weird time for people to be freaking out about development because we are much closer now to a whole lot of things, and you can see that if you go follow our development on GitHub.
And I think that's one of the coolest parts is just being able to follow the development on GitHub. And me coming from the ecosystem, I know that was one of the ways that I did it is just following the GitHub repos. And but I want to take the time to thank you both for your time today. I appreciate all of the insights into the Chia R&D at the high level as well as all the way down to the nitty-gritty of discussing more plans while we were on the call, which is always really cool. So thank you all. Thank you to those who jumped in and asked the great questions. And we'll be back here with some more events in the near future. So keep an eye on our social channels and our Discord in order to get updates on that. Have a wonderful day, all.